Good evening and welcome everyone to the first of 3 information sessions for experienced officers and others with an interest in a policing career with the Surrey Police Service. I'm Chief Constable Norm Lipinski, and I would like to acknowledge that today we are doing this work on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. I would also like to acknowledge that this week marks National Police Week across Canada. I know there are many current and retired police officers who are online with us this evening. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your service. For those of you who have served or continue to serve in Surrey, thank you for being the guardians for the people of Surrey. Before we get started, I want to let you know that there will be a question and answer session after our brief presentation. In order to submit a question, there is a small chat icon at the top right of your screen. Click on that and it will take you to the chat area. The Surrey Police Service is here because the City of Surrey decided that as one of the fastest growing communities and soon to be the largest city in BC, it needs an independent police service that is built for Surrey. The provincial government approved the SPS and appointed a board. The SPS is a duly constituted police service in the province of British Columbia, and it is going to grow alongside of the city. And in many ways, we are the future. Before we begin this session, I'd like to take just a few moments to introduce you to the vision of the SPS and to speak briefly about our values. Our vision is to be a progressive, community-based police service that values diversity, partnerships, and accountability. Our sole focus will be to do all that we can to enhance public safety in Surrey and to contribute to the community's overall well-being. What we value at the SPS is honor, integrity, respect, courage, compassion, and inclusiveness. Behind me, you see the SPS badge. We are very proud of this badge. The Coast Salish Eye was designed by a local Semiahmoo First Nation artist, Leslie Wells. It symbolizes our ethos of being guardians of the community. The check pattern is taken from the Surrey Police in England, and it represents Peel's principles of policing. And finally, the 6 stars represent the 6 town centers in Surrey. I'd also like to give a little briefing on where we are today. We've been here for 4 months. And right now, we have all the basic constructs of a major police service. We have an organizational structure. We have senior command staff hired. We are signatories to the IIO MOU. And we've been designated by the federal government as a Category 1 police service in order to access national databases. What we're working on now is standing up a recruiting unit, both for experienced officers and new recruits. 3 levels of government were involved in discussions with them. There's various committees underway that are working together towards a deployment model that will come later this year. I think it's clear to say that we are here to stay. We're all working together and we're all working towards the fruition of boots on the ground sometime this year. One of the questions I get most often is, how are you actually going about this? And what we do is we employ a lot of business practices. We employ cross-functional teams. So many of the people that are hired as members, they start out doing projects to stand up the Surrey Police Service. And then when the project is completed, they will move on to their designated units. At the present time, there's 41 members. And I find that it's a small but very mighty team. We are occupying an old bylaw building, and this makes the building a little bit unique in the sense of there's so much enthusiasm here, the dedication that you feel every day, and I can tell you there's a lot of heart here. In short, we're very organized and we're very enthused about the future of the Surrey Police Service. I want to mention a few things about the ecosystem of policing in BC. First of all, it needs to be known that we are not pulling out of the integrated teams. and Deputy Matsumoto will expand on this in a few moments. With respect to our municipal policing partners, I'm in constant dialogue with all the chiefs, and certainly there is support in the direction we are going from all municipal agencies. I keep in touch with them as we move through this process. With respect to the RCMP, they are heavily involved with us and all the various committees. And I want to say to the RCMP members online that we recognize that this is an anxious time. We acknowledge your professionalism and dedication to service. Our intention is to make this a smooth transition, a passing of the baton, if you will. Together, public safety is number one for all of us. We talk about it a lot here. We talk about it at the various committees and at the various levels of government. This is not about doing it fast. This is about doing it right. And sometimes we check and we double check of the transition arrangement to ensure that public safety will not be compromised. For the next steps, there's three big ones. Number one, right around the corner is community consultation. After that, with the police board, we are going to develop a strategic plan. We will get the information from the community as a result of that community consultation. We'll look at the crime data, the call load, other data such as social economic conditions, and we put together a 3-year strategic plan. And then it'll be the deployment model. Deputy Lesage will talk about that in a moment. Now I'd like to introduce the 3 senior members of my team, beginning with Deputy Chief Jennifer Hyland, in charge of our support services, in charge of recruiting, human resources. Deputy Chief Mike Lesage, in charge of our Community Policing Bureau, and Deputy Chief Todd Matsumoto, in charge of our Investigative Bureau. Each deputy has some information for you, and then we'll open it up to questions thereafter. I will start with Deputy Chief Hyland. Jen, over to you.
Thanks, Chief. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to spend a little bit of time just giving you some information about how the Surrey Police Service processes regarding recruitment and hiring work for us. And I also want to spend a significant amount of time actually explaining what our culture and our environment is like here at Surrey Police Service, so you get a sense of the type of environment you would be seeking to join. So the first thing is joining the SPS. So you'll see from our website, we have several current job postings. Now, when our postings go out there, you'll see a difference in sometimes of how they're listed. Sometimes you'll see us list a job posting referred to as a pool posting. Those postings stay up a little bit longer, and that's because the particular position we're looking to fill might require a more significant number of individuals. And so we will leave those pool postings up a little bit longer. Some of our other postings are a little bit more specific to certain job types, and we're looking for fewer people for those positions. So what you'll see is the positions will go up. There's no set time frame for what comes down, but when they do have an end date, that will be clearly listed, telling you when the job posting is going to close. Now, I think it's important to note that it doesn't mean that those particular job positions won't get posted again in the future. It simply means that the current state that the SPS is at in their hiring, we no longer need to evaluate or look at anybody in those positions at this given time. So regarding our current hires, it's important to know that right now we're just looking at exempt police officers. And what that means is current police officers that are in their policing role active with a police force throughout Canada. We will be looking at brand new recruit hires, and in a couple of weeks towards the end of June, we'll be doing a new recruit information session. And at that point in time, the information session will be dedicated to the information new recruits need, and we'll be able to answer specific questions for those brand new people to policing. And then future job postings, what you're going to see is a series of postings that are going to come forward as our organization grows. We need to be posting for roles throughout the bureaus and also throughout the various ranks. All the information will be on our recruiting website. And now what I want to do is transition into our experienced officer application process. So I'm just going to give an overview of this tonight because in 2 weeks we are going to have another info session that is going to be very detailed towards experienced police officers. When you go to our website, you're going to open a profile. And once you're there, the profile allows you to submit applications to our jobs. You're going to be asked to do a resume and a cover letter. And I think it's important to share with you that we are getting hundreds of applications from across the country. So I really encourage you to take the time with your resume and your cover letter. Tell us really who you are, share your policing experience with us. Make sure you're really fulsome in that process. It's the first glance that we have to consider you for our process. So really take the time to make sure you're telling us your story of who you are and why you want to come and be part of our team. Some of our postings require competency overviews. So you'll see for specialized submissions, such as our recent ops skills posting, there is obviously some additional competencies that you would want to make sure that you were covering off in your submission. Our team of recruiters who are current hired police officers for the SPS review the cover letter and the resumes. And then what they do is they determine who is going to be scheduled for the next step, which is our panel interview. And what's really important for me to share is that the panel interview is strictly confidential. We as an organization don't talk to anybody else outside our organization about the interview or who it is that's being interviewed. The panel interview is made up of at least 3 police officers from the SPS. We endeavor to always have representation from all 3 bureaus. And honestly, we do that because the experienced police officers that are putting in have such varied, amazing backgrounds that we recognize the applicants could actually join the SPS and support us in multiple different roles. So in addition to the 3 police officers, we have a civilian HR expert that takes part in our interview process and provides us additional oversight and guidance as we go through our interviewing process. Once that's done, those successful candidates who are determined to be an initial fit for the organization go to a background investigation. The background is triggered by the applicant filling out a very detailed document that goes into their personal history and their connections. And once they complete that and send it back, that is the document that also includes the applicant's references. The background is inside to a background investigator who will then call all the references and look into everything that was in the background document. The applicant actually then goes through a secondary interview with a background investigator to talk about anything that might have been referenced in their background or any questions that come up. If additional interviews with the recruiting team are required, those are also set up. And then once everybody goes to background, if they're determined to be a fit for the organization, then they go to the offer of employment. And our offers of employment come from Chief Lipinski. So obviously, if you're going to come to the SPS, you want to know what those benefits are. I'm not going to get into detail about all the benefits, but I just will ask that you go to our website where you can actually review all of our Manulife benefits there. I will just share, a personal experience that, I came to the SPS in January and I required as part of a treatment support through our Manulife plan. My experience prior to coming to the SPS was it was a little bit difficult and cumbersome to get access to the treatment that I needed previously. And within 14 days of being here and a 15-minute call with Manulife, I was fully supported in what it was that I needed. And so I share that because I think that the questions that I get in my role is making sure that people are going to be supported and have access to benefits. It's a big issue when people are leaving their organizations. And I just want to give the assurance that I have never felt as supported in my wellness as I had since I arrived at the SPS. Again, on the lines of benefits and salary, our salaries are very competitive across Canada. They're competitive with other police forces that are similar in size and complexity, considering the level of service calls that are required. And police officer salaries are publicly available. So if you're interested in how the SPS compares to others across the country, it's easy to access that information on the internet. So the next thing I want to talk about is our training and development. I'm actually really proud of our philosophy at SPS, where we believe that all of our police officers and staff will be developed and invested in from the moment they arrive in our organization until the day that they retire. We believe that it's important to invest in people. We believe that the future of our leadership means that we need to be training and teaching our people leadership skills in advance of them assuming leadership roles. Our philosophy is that we will continue to work with people from the day they get here so that when they are competing for and elevated into formalized leadership roles, they actually assume those roles having already been trained and ready to take on their new challenges. When they're in the new role, they will start being developed and advanced into the future role that they need to go to next. And so our whole philosophy is to really pay attention to succession planning. What's really important to us is that we know eventually our police officers and our leaders are going to move along, and we want to be planning for the future of the SPS. And our philosophy of developing people from recruit to retirement is to make sure that every single one of our police officers has every opportunity to be able to be the chief of police one day. So in line with training and development, we are also offering a post-secondary education program. So for those individuals that want to advance their education outside of the SPS, that program will allow people to seek both financial support and time support to be able to complete those studies. Within our corporate leadership and development team that we have established here, we will be seeking to offer our police officers and our staff additional training and conferences that fall outside of SPS. One of the things that we recognize is that the expanding your leadership training beyond just the policing culture and the policing world is extremely important. And there's amazing lessons in leadership to be learned from other professions and organizations. And the SPS is taking a very innovative and inclusive perspective on our training and conferences. And we want to make those opportunities available. Again, not that you have to wait years and years to experience those things, but that our newest recruits and our most senior people continue to get those opportunities throughout their entire career. And then the next on training and development is obviously to do with our operational skills. We're extremely fortunate to have two leaders in our operational skills area that have advanced education in ops skills. And what that means is that they have trained and studied better, more advanced ways of interacting with the public. What we know when we want to keep our police officers safe and they're well trained, and we give them as many options as they can to know how to deal with the day-to-day engagement and situations that they face. If we train them well and give them opportunities to continue to make sure that they have different environments to practice and learn, that when they face those unfolding incidents, they have the skill set, the tools, and the training to make decisions that are not only safe for them and their partners, but really are safe for our community members. And what goes along with training is obviously our equipment. Our philosophy is to take care of our people. And so it's not just about training them to do the best job that they can, it's about providing them with equipment to do that job. We believe in being a modern and progressive police force, and we are going to be outfitting our police officers with top-of-the-line uniforms and gear. And one of the most important things that I want to go back to again is that we are innovative and cutting edge, and we really want to always be researching what is the new type of equipment, what is new type of training, what is the new philosophies that will help our police officers and the Surrey Police Service be able to provide the best service possible to the citizens of Surrey. And now employee wellness. So I hope that the theme that we're trying to get across, that our people matter to us, and employee wellness is a very important area. We didn't want to wait until our police service was fully hired before we put time and attention into this section. And so for those that were on our website, you'll have noticed in the last few weeks, our sergeant of our employee wellness unit has already been posted. And eventually that will be a team of a sergeant and 2 constables. And we believe that when you take care of your people and you pay attention to their needs, that they will take care of the community. And so our philosophy here at the SPS is all about making sure that none of our police officers or staff ever feel left behind, that none of our police officers or staff ever feel alone. And one of the things that's very important is that we as an executive team have a group of people that are able to connect and make sure that we are able to pay attention to any changes in culture or morale or things that are going on with our people. And we feel that this specialized team that's dedicated to provide support to all employees, dedicated to prevention events of wellness and training, but also will be available to tell the executive when there are things going on that we need to address or be aware of. And we don't want any of our staff ever to feel like they've come to work and not been supported. And so this is an extremely important unit to us, and that is why we've posted one of these positions already. And finally, on the culture of inclusion. And so the first thing that we wanted to do with our culture of inclusion was to honor, respect, and include the history of the SPS. So one of the things that's important for everybody to know is that SPS is not new. We originally existed from the 1890s until 1951. There was originally 21 police officers that made up over the course of that time the SPS. And the chief's decision has been that we will honor and include that original history, and our badge numbers for our police officers will start at 22. The other thing that's really important about our culture of inclusion here at the SPS is that everybody is on the same team, and that our motto with each other is that we are committed to each other as a team. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody's ideas and input are welcome, and we want everybody to take part in this special experience of being able to build something from the ground up. All of our staff, our police officers and our civilian staff are included in that process. And one thing that we decided to do to honor that was create a welcoming challenge coin that are numbered in order of coin. And those coins are given out in order of your hire. And that doesn't mean how much service or who is in which rank. It was what order you arrived in our organization. And accompanying the coin is a parchment from the chief that explains the history of the SPS, the welcoming of all of our staff into our environment, and making sure that it's clear to everybody that our environment isn't about making sure that everybody is friends, but honoring that we are all in this together and that we're here to support the community, and that we will make sure that everybody feels included and that we're committed to making sure that we support each other through our whole process and our experience in building this new police force. And so that's all I have for now. And thank you very much. I'll turn it back to Chief Lipinski.
Thanks, Jen. I'll now ask Deputy Chief Todd Matsumoto to make a few remarks about Investigative Bureau.
Perfect. Thank you, Chief, and welcome everybody. The first thing I want to say about the Investigative Bureau is we took our time in deciding how this bureau was going to be built out. We made sure we included subject matter experts that have a validated history in working in serious crime and leading serious crime teams. We also canvassed external, opinions on the matter based on more of an academic flavor on how we should go about doing this. So I'll just kind of contrast that with a traditional model of investigative teams, which is really focused on a specific crime type. And as an example, you may have a smaller team that just deals with domestic violence files. We believe a more modern approach is to build teams around offenders. And this recognizes that offenders are not confined to a single crime type, and we're not confining our teams to chasing after a single crime type. We have built larger teams to address this. And with that comes an economy of scale and a level of expertise that we can build into those teams over time. So as an example, our Special Investigations Unit will have teams that investigate power-based crimes. That includes a number of offenses, and it includes a number of victims as well. They'll be looking after domestic violence files, they'll be looking after sex assault files, and criminal harassment related events. Again, the common thread weaving through this is that these are power-based crimes. We can set up our teams to be successful by giving them tools to navigate these types of investigations, for example, trauma-informed practice. Another example that we have in the different way that we build teams is through our proactive enforcement teams. These teams are tasked with investigating and disrupting offenders involved in often organized crime and gang-related activities. So compare that or contrast that to a team that is just focused on drugs or drug trafficking. We realize that organized crimes and gangs involved in trafficking in a bunch of different illicit activities and materials. For example, they could be trafficking firearms. They could be trafficking drugs and also trafficking in money, for example. So we want to build teams that will be able to address all of those rather than just simply focusing on one crime type with many teams. The last example I'll give you is teams that concentrate on prolific offenders. And I'll just also say that a traditional model of investigation is really a reactive type of policing. A serious crime occurs, the team reacts and tries to investigate that crime and, of course, bring that to Crown Counsel. That will still continue. We've also tried to bring in and build in some proactive policing activities, and that's what we see with the prolific offender teams. So the goal will be the introduction of those activities and trying to disrupt that activity. Again, not focusing on just, for example, break and enters, but understanding that offenders will deal with all types of property crime, including robberies, potentially commercial B&Es, residential B&Es, and even patterns of theft from auto. So we want teams to be able to deal with all of those together. Also important to know, Chief Lipinski, is our commitment to join with integrated units. That is a topical matter in the public eye today with our gang violence, and police service support for integrated teams is crucial and critical for doing our part to try and minimize that type of activity. Examples of that integrated teams are things like IHIT, the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team. There's URSU, you've seen those cars, the red cars around town. They're engaged in integrated traffic enforcement. And there's others like integrated police dogs and integrated emergency response team. So we know that crimes and criminals are not confined to boundaries. Integrated teams are a means to provide investigative and enforcement strategies that leverage the combined efforts of all police agencies, meaning municipal and RCMP. Integrated teams benefit from a reciprocal relationship with participating agencies. Officers sent by the SPS to an integrated team bring their skills, bring their knowledge and experiences to the integrated team, which helps them be more effective in the activities that they participate in. But the reciprocal to that is our officers will then also learn new skills and be exposed to new experiences. And when they return to the SPS, they bring those experiences back with them, and they in turn expand our capabilities. The last thing I want to mention is just about our experienced officers and the specialized training that they have. I alluded to this earlier about the level of experience that we brought into building our Investigative Services Bureau. And that type of leadership continues with the people that we brought on. The core group of leaders we brought on for the investigative services are going to help build and help lead these units. I've made a few observations about them. First, they have significant experience with complex investigations, proven expertise in a number of specialized fields. Most of their work history has been involved in serious crime investigations, and this brings an unparalleled level of experience to the Surrey Police Service. It will help shape our team activities and our deployment. Second, these police officers come from both municipal and RCMP backgrounds, and they also have been involved and have proven leadership in teams that they've led in the organizations from which they've come from. And of course, we benefit from this. This brings a level of leadership to the SPS that is crucial in building and leading these teams. And finally, the thing I've noticed about this group is they've completed extensive work in integrated teams. Whether these are the integrated teams I've just mentioned, or maybe they're more of a joint forces type operations. The point is they're used to working in that environment. They're used to understanding the nature of crime, the fact that criminals that offend in Surrey will also move to neighboring jurisdictions and offend there, and vice versa. We'll have offenders bleed into Surrey from other jurisdictions. They keenly recognize that. They see the value of sharing information. They see the value of leveraging resources from other agencies. We help each other, and more importantly, we share information. So those are the key pieces for the investigative services team. Thank you. I turn it back to you, Chief.
Thanks, Todd. I'll now turn it over to Deputy Chief Mike Lesage, who's going to be talking about Community Policing Bureau.
Thank you, Chief. First, I want to thank all the online participants for joining us tonight and for your interest in becoming part of the Surrey Police Service. I'm responsible for the Community Policing Bureau, which includes all uniform policing sections, crime prevention and intervention, as well as programs to engage with the public. The Community Policing Bureau is pivoted on strong communication and collaboration between community residents and the Surrey Police Service, building in the practice of focused community engagement through all aspects of the Bureau. In order to build a police service that works with Surrey residents and businesses, it is crucial that we get input from the community on their priorities, concerns, and their needs for public safety. We are in the planning stages of creating a comprehensive community consultation that will be rolling out next month. Community consultation will be an ongoing and regular practice for the SPS with regular engagement. This will promote trust, respect, to problem solve collaboratively and to ultimately reduce crime. There is significant importance that police officers hired reflect a diverse and inclusive workplace with a desire to engage with the community in problem solving and relationship building. The police officers currently onboarded to the Community Policing Bureau are from a variety of backgrounds and experiences. They come from both municipal and RCMP backgrounds and are proven leaders in the community policing field. I'm sure everyone is interested in when the SPS will have boots on the ground. As the chief mentioned, it is his goal to have some operational police officers this fall. However, we are working with all levels of government and with the Surrey RCMP to ensure everything is in place for a smooth, phased transition of frontline policing services. It's an exciting time here as we build a modern police service from the ground up. I hope many of you will join us.
Thanks, Mike. Before I open it up to questions, I just want to build on something that Jen said, and that's about the training. I want to start by talking about post-secondary training. I'm a fan of that and know that for those that may want to pursue that as SPS members, we are going to have funds set aside for that. It could be an arts degree, it could be a PhD. If it's police related, we encourage that. Investigative training. We're looking at building a program where there is an exact continuum from constable to commander status pertaining to investigations, so that a constable knows that if he or she wants to pursue this stream, here's the steps. It's very evident. It's not patchwork. Here's the various levels of training that you need to undertake to reach a certain level, whether it's property crime investigators or people crime investigators. What's really important to us, and I think important to the police profession, is leadership training. I've often said that in many ways, the most important rank in policing is the patrol sergeant at 2 o'clock in the morning, helping the members take calls. And so we're going to spend a lot of time and effort in training not only supervisors, but also constables that will be acting as supervisors. We feel that's very, very important. And then, of course, all the way up the ranks, the staff sergeant, inspector, superintendent, DCs. Want to close with the operational skills. At the present time, we have scoped out 3 days a year for operational skills. If we need more, we will train more. We're talking about everything from de-escalation, which is really, really important to me personally, to active shooter training and reality-based training. We're already scoping out a training area where some of this can take place. And finally, I'll mention wellness, so important to us. We're interested in researching the best of resiliency training and policing. There's a lot of research that's just coming out on that, on which is the best course of action to pursue. And we're very interested in taking that kind of knowledge and make it specific to Surrey Police Service. I'll stop there and we'll start with the questions this evening.
Good evening, Chief. First question we have is, what equipment will the officers be issued? Will the current equipment being used by the RCMP be transferred to the SPS officers?
All the equipment presently in Surrey Detachment will be transferred over to the Surrey Police Service, except for the personal equipment that the members presently utilize. So the uniform, of course, and the body armor is going to be brand new. We're looking at, and we're very fortunate, where we look at Western Canada police agencies, and they're very supportive of what we're doing. And we talked to them about what's the best equipment, what's the best personal equipment. And essentially what we're going to have here is the best out of all those agencies. Body armor is one of those, which is very light. We've identified a manufacturer. It's very light, very flexible. I'm going to say it's top tier. Also, a handgun is going to be new. It's going to be the Glock Generation 5, which essentially says that it is the latest Glock configuration. So all that to say that the communal equipment, such as carbines and so forth, will be coming over and we'll be training on them. And all personal issue stuff is going to be brand new for the members.
Thank you, sir. Next question. How does the seniority of a current police officer transfer to the SPS?
We've talked a lot about the seniority issue. I'll ask Jen to expand on this, but it's very important to recognize the service of the members that join the SPS. So Jen, if you can just fill them in on a couple of details of our plan.
Perfect. Thanks, Chief. Yeah, for seniority, because we are unable to just hire everybody in order of rank for our organization, we need to hire people in batches all throughout the organization. And so that means we are hiring staff sergeants at the same time we're hiring constables. And so the number that people get when they come into the organization, their badge number, will be reflective of the time at which they were hired, the order in which they were hired. But what we are going to do is provide a service pin, and the service pin will be worn by each police officer on their uniform. And there'll be a bar for every 10 years of service that they have so that we can make sure that we're honoring the service level of our police officers. When it comes to transferring your seniority as far as your benefits, that basically what will happen is if you have enough years of service and you get a certain amount of leave or a certain amount of pay scale based on your level of NCO or constable that you're at in your organization, then we are honoring and bringing you into the organization at that same relative level. So you don't lose anything in the transfer when you come to the SPS.
I'll just build on that regarding the seniority pins that Jen mentioned. That also applies to the civilian members. We think that's very important to be inclusive with them. And also, I just want to recognize the traditions that have occurred in the years gone by. We're very, very cognizant of that, and we respect that. And it's the traditions of the RCMP, and it includes the fallen members. It doesn't matter which service, but we are very cognizant and we have some plans in place for that.
Next question is the SPS currently hiring for any civilian positions?
Yes, we are. Again, I'll ask Jen to answer that. As we move forward and as we look at the organizational chart, it is evolving on almost a weekly basis. And I'll ask Jen to fill in some of the details.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, some of the civilian positions that we're looking for are in specialized areas where the current staff at the City of Surrey don't have those positions. So we have signed an agreement with QP, and all of the current civilian staff that are working at the detachment have positions and jobs with us here at the SPS. But there are additional positions that don't currently exist at the detachment that are on our organizational chart, and those will be civilian posted positions. And so some of those areas are in our communications and media section. Some of them are in the IT area, and additional things in the area such as we have a weapons armor position, because these are all functions that as Surrey Police Service establishes itself, there aren't the current supports right now that exist for that, because the RCMP detachment has services and support outside of the detachment, and we will be assuming all of those supports internally.
This question was touched on briefly. Perhaps you could just expand on when will the SPS have boots on the ground?
Certainly, that's probably one of the most common questions we get. I can tell you that even as a lawyer, all the legal instruments that have to be completed, it's quite complex. And in some ways, I didn't expect that it would be that complex. So 3 levels of government are working towards that. We're all leaning in and trying to get the job done. My personal goal is sometime later this fall. But yet again, it's contingent about a lot of moving parts coming together. But I can tell you there's a lot of enthusiasm and there's a lot of goodwill from 3 levels of government to get the job done.
Next question is, will constables that are applying for sergeant automatically be placed in behind current substantive sergeants from established agencies?
Jen, I'll ask you to just expand or answer that question. Thank you.
Sure, Chief. Yeah, I would say that ultimately right now it's a very competitive process, and there are a lot of current sergeants that are in the process. So it's not to say that somebody who is not currently a sergeant and is a constable in another location could not be considered for a sergeant's position, but ultimately there are a lot of sergeants in the application process. And so they currently have experience. They often are more competitive, but it doesn't mean that those aren't taken into consideration. Ultimately, it's the skills and abilities of the applicant in comparison to who's in the competition with them that ultimately determines who it is that gets the job.
Thank you. Will there be shorter training opportunities for those applying from the BC Sheriffs or others who have peace officer status?
I think the first thing that we do is have a look at what training they have completed. And that brings up sort of a side issue that any police officer coming here, first of all, has a week of onboarding. And that's a lot to do with the logistics and so forth of how we run SPS. And I'll ask Jen to expand on that. And secondly, for our constables that will be deployed into the community, we're looking to have at least a week, perhaps 2 weeks of what we call core patrol training, recognizing that we're going to have a number of different agencies on the street. We have to ensure that everybody's talking the same language, that everybody has similar tactics, etc. Really to ensure that we're all on our game from an officer safety perspective. And so with respect to other related law enforcement training, I think that's quite frankly on a case-by-case basis, but perhaps Jen can expand on that as well.
Sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of it really is making sure that we're meeting the standards and guidelines that are expected for a police officer in the province of BC. So there's not really a way to have a blanket answer to that question. It really depends on the training and qualifications that each individual has. But our onboarding process is significant. We want to make sure that people have the time to learn and understand our systems, be exposed to our policies and procedures. And most importantly, we really recognize that it's never happened before that you've had to build a police organization at this size from the ground up. And so in all other police organizations, really in Canada, if not the world right now, they spent many, many years building relationships and building their ability to work with each other over many years. And so we are very cognizant of the importance that we take with our police officers and our staff to make sure that we all understand our culture and our processes, because we're all coming together for the first time together, and it's how we build in the initial start that will make a difference down the road. So that doesn't mean we can't be inclusive of people coming from other policing backgrounds, but really the standard of training is going to be set by the provincial guidelines.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question is, what will the physical portion of the application process look like for SPS?
Jen, I'll ask you to answer that, please.
Sure. And so depending on whether or not, obviously for brand new recruits, there is a significant physical application process. And for the person who's asking this question, again, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a very detailed process, I believe, at the end of June for brand new recruits. And we're going to have information about all the physical processes they need to do with vision standards, hearing standards, what the physical application process looks like. And then for those who are exempt police officers, these are people who are currently operational and active within their current police service. And so there isn't they're active in their organizations right now. So there isn't an additional physical expectation for them to come through with us because they're active functional police officers in good standing with their organizations.
Just to pick up on that, brand new recruits will be trained at the JIBC We get asked that quite often, and we've got some placeholders with them already for 2022. Whether it's brand new recruits or serving members, we're really particular of the type of person that we want here. We're a community policing service, so we want that sort of servant, sort of guardian, not a warrior type ethos. And we're very particular about that. Secondly, we're looking at team players. And I know we talk about that a lot in policing, et cetera, but this is going to be a very, very unique environment. And so I'm looking for those team players, the ones that are trainable, the ones that are optimistic, that ones that have a lot of enthusiasm.
Thank you. Next question is about educational requirements. So what are the education requirements for new recruits? And if somebody doesn't have a university education, will an equivalency exam be offered?
Yes, I'll start off with that. And we look at and prefer some post-secondary education. That's pretty flexible, which also includes some military, it could be military service, it could be trades, it could be other education, et cetera. A lot of it has to do with the particular case that you bring to the table. I'll ask Jen to fill in the blanks on that.
Yeah, I think that the standard, if we look around the reviews that happened across the world and even in the UK and recently in Canada, when there's been recommendations for hiring strategies into police agencies, that individuals who have some post-secondary and life experience are certainly a little bit more better equipped to come into the type of role and training that we're looking to have. And so while you'll see on the postings that there isn't necessarily a standard for post-secondary education, as I said when I first started this presentation, we're experiencing a high level of competitiveness. And I can say that obviously you want to put your best foot forward. And so it's not necessarily that somebody without any post-secondary education can't be successful, but they are in a competition with people who have life experience, volunteer experience, and some post-secondary experience. And so those are all things to consider, and it really comes down to who is in the competition with you at the time and who has the strongest skills and abilities.
We have some questions relating to the timeline for when new applicants can apply to the SPS, and also about how many seats are reserved at the JIBC.
Yes, at the present time, we're going to be focusing on experienced officers, and then we'll be slowly moving into the realm of brand new recruits. And we have a plan for that. We've discussed it. It's still evolving. And I'll ask Jen to just expand on that a little bit, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We anticipate that sometime middle of summer, we will be opening up our new recruit process to start. And at this point in time, we're planning for having at least 6 new recruits to potentially enter the JIBC for the January class. And then we will continue with that new recruit process once we start, including putting new recruits through the classes throughout 2022.
I mentioned earlier about the ecosystem of policing in the Lower Mainland. And in my discussions with the various chiefs, which we do on a regular basis, we certainly do not want to upset that ecosystem. And so if we get a lot of applications from any department, any detachment, and a lot of them look really good to completion of the process, I will be in touch with that chief. I certainly won't discuss names and so forth and so on, but that's the kind of cooperation that we have. And perhaps the chief can plan, or I can plan with my deputies about how to have these new applications spaced out a bit, or hires at different time, etc. It's really important for the Lower Mainland not to upset the ecosystem. And again, I say public safety is number one, and we're all working together towards that end.
Thank you, Chief. Next question is from an experienced police officer, wondering if they are applying early on with SPS to be one of the initial boots on the ground, but their background is in investigative services. If they are hired into patrol initially, then when the Investigative Services Bureau opens up, would they need to apply for a position there? And would they have to be in patrol for a certain amount of time?
Thanks. That's a really good question, because I mentioned earlier that some people that are initially hired with us, they're going to be tasked with a number of different functions. You might have a recruiting function. You might have some project that needs to be done in order to stand up the police service. Another example is policy development. And then go to your assigned unit. So with that, I'll ask Deputy Matsumoto to talk about Investigative Bureau, and then I'll ask Jen just to fill in the blanks on the process of how to get there.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. So good question from the poster there. Those are the kind of skill sets that we're going to be canvassing with the member when they apply. We'll be talking to them about it. I mean, it'll be evident in their resume, but we'll talk to them about it at the interview stage. There are some opportunities to bring on people early to be part of the sort of transition recruiting unit to help build and hire for future placements. However, I think the intent for our deployment model is to support our frontline policing members when they deploy, if the date is later this fall, to also have in place investigative teams. So you may not be waiting that long to get into an investigative unit. The goal is to have those units come online in the fall. In the meantime, there's two options. You could either come on early and help build recruiting until the time that we need you in that investigative team, or we can delay that application and bring you on in the fall or in early 22 to start building those teams. There's some options there.
Jen?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And one of the things that you're going to see in our upcoming constable posting is there going to be two different streams, and you're welcome to put in for as many different postings as you want. So when the posting goes out for constables, you'll see one that's going to go out, and it'll be very specific to people who are interested in community policing, uniform frontline, but some of our specialized engagement teams there. So there's a diversity team, there's a community outreach team, and then there's obviously the frontline response. The other posting for constables will be for investigative services, and it will be a broad posting where we're looking for people who have the skills to be in a broad range of different teams. So you're welcome to put into as many postings as you want. And to Deputy Matsumoto's point, when we do the interviews with people, one of the questions we ask is what skill set they have to bring to the SPS. And then we take the time to say, tell us what are the 2 or 3 positions that you would most seek to be with the SPS. And so we consider that in the interview. And so the reality of it is these postings are going to go out at the same time because we're building all of these bureaus at the same time. So my unit, the support services, requires support right now. And as we reach the deployment model, both the investigative team and the community policing team will also need resources. So by all means, encourage everybody to put in for as many positions as they want. But if your interest is just 2 investigative services, then you can put in for that position, and just know that you'll be in the competition just amongst those group of people instead of giving yourself the best opportunity by being open to as many areas of the SPS as you can be.
I'll build on that. I think that it's fair to say, given what we've said here this evening, that flexibility is very, very important in the applicant. I do want to mention Community Policing Bureau as well. There's many opportunities there. We, of course, have 5 districts here in Surrey. There's going to be an inspector assigned to each district for community consultation and crime reduction. Of course, we're going to have duty officers, and then we'll have a number of smaller units, diversity unit, et cetera, that crime prevention, youth, et cetera. I think that the youth area, wraparound services, dealing with youth at risk, very important to us here as well, given the gang conflict. So there's lots of opportunities in Community Policing Bureau.
Thank you. Next question is, will the SPS be implementing 2-person patrol cars?
Right now, we don't have a collective agreement. We will have a collective agreement in due course. We don't take part in that. That will deal with that. So that will be part of the collective agreement. given major municipal departments, I would lean towards, yes, there will be two-person vehicles. A lot of details to be worked out there yet, but we have to wait until there's a union established and then collectively bargain and then come up with a collective agreement about the details of what that may look like.
Next question is, what will community consultation look like?
I'll start off and then I'll ask Mike to fill in some of the blanks, but it's so important for us to get that feedback from the community. We, of course, have a very diverse community here, and we need to reach out. And it's important to remember this is not one and done. We're going to do this project, which is going to be very comprehensive, but it's something that's going to carry on in next year and the year after that, because we always have to circle back and see if we're on our game. Essentially, we're going to have two streams and of what we're going to do, and I'll ask Mike just to expand on both streams.
Thanks, Chief. This will be the most in-depth community consultation that I've ever been part of. It's going to roll out this summer. It's going to consist of focus groups and surveys to begin with. And I think the data from those focus groups and surveys are going to be compiled, and then we'll work with the Surrey Police Board to determine a strategic plan as to how we're going to do policing in the different areas. I think, as the Chief mentioned, it's going to be an ongoing consultation. The idea of the SPS is we're going to be flexible. We're going to do different things in different neighborhoods.
Yeah, I'll pick up on what Mike said there. Of course, we have 5 districts, and the surveys will be specific and the focus groups will be specific to those districts. It's fair to say that there be different policing needs in some of the districts. We want to dial in and be very specific to whatever the community needs are and move forward from there.
Thank you, Chief. Question about if there will be a minimum number of years of service before a constable becomes a field trainer or is allowed to go from patrol to a specialty section.
That's a very good question in the sense of, yes, there will be a minimum number of years required of service and demonstrated competencies before you become a field trainer. We have yet to arrive on determining specifically what that will be, but that will roll out as far as a policy statement is in the coming months. And I think it's important that we really focus in on that. And your second part of the question was?
Oh, if there's a minimum number of years before they become a field trainer or are allowed to go from
Yes.
specialty.
So I call it preferred to preferred or from patrol to preferred, etc. So yes, we will build that in. Right now, as the deputies had mentioned, if you got the skill sets and so forth, we have a process for that. Once we're established and once we get moving, of course, there are going to be movement and there could be promotions and you got to fill in the vacancies, etc. So there will be some details about that, and there will be a minimum amount of time required before one can move into that area. And in certain areas, there may be a maximum amount of years that you could spend in that area. I believe in having movement within the organization, but not in all units, because sometimes it takes a long, long time to develop a skill set and the credibility in specific units. So much more to come on that topic.
Thank you, Chief. Has the SPS considered buying into the joint training facility in Delta?
Well, that's an easy question for me to answer because I was part of putting it together. So it's called RMTC, Regional Municipal Training Center, and there's 5 agencies involved in that. It started with the anchor of that facility is the simulator. I'm a huge fan of simulations. You could do a lot of different scenarios in a very short period of time, de-escalation or less lethal or lethal force. And so we are discussing a couple of things with our partners. And when I say partners, that includes the 5 agencies that are part of the RMTC. That includes Abbotsford as well. And so there's lots of opportunities here in the future. And if we didn't have such a big number of people that we need to hire, I would like our recruits or even our experienced officers to go through the simulator. And there's probably people online that have done that. And, more often than not, it's very, very favorable about the skill sets that are learned, but more importantly, the confidence as you walk out of there of having done well in a number of very challenging scenarios that you covered off on in 45 minutes. And the most common remark I get is that was a really good training. And in fact, Chief, it was fun.
Thank you, Chief. This will be our last question. Sorry, we didn't have a chance to get to every question. This last one is, will there be an opportunity for members currently working on an integrated team to apply for SPS and stay on that integrated team?
I'll ask Jen to answer this, but I'll start off in that, we are right now obviously taking the position that wherever you are, we're interested in, and if you got the qualifications, if you got the competencies, if you got the enthusiasm, and if you've got the, I'll say the tenacity and the resiliency, we're interested. And Jen, over to you pertaining specifically to the integrated teams, and maybe Todd can follow up on that.
Yeah, great question, and we appreciate that. Actually, it's just earlier this week that we started having the conversations about the integrated team deployment. Obviously, the chief is committed to staying in the integrated teams. And so just, in fairness to the process, there are memorandums of understanding and different deployment processes that we still, as an organization, need to work out with both the RCMP and those integrated teams before we're going to be able to have SPS hired police officers embedded back into that integrated team. But it's safe to say that once those processes are put in place, our commitment is to fully engage with the integrated teams. And so certainly if an applicant to the Surrey Police is established in an integrated team, they're obviously there because they have an amazing skill set. They wouldn't be there if they weren't. And so it's within the SPS's best interest to, if the applicant meets our values and ethics and is somebody that is hired in the job, then absolutely that conversation would be had about if they wished to stay in that integrated team environment, then that discussion would be had. And if they, wanted to stay in the integrated team for a shorter period of time and transition back, again, our philosophy at the SPS is to be supportive of people's experiences in policing and their career desires. So if somebody has a desire to come to us as an organization and continue that experience, then we will be having those conversations. It's just a little premature to explain what that will look like because those arrangements haven't quite been worked out yet. And I know DC Lesage is involved in the discussions with that, if he wants to add to that after DC Matsumoto.
Todd, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just say a quick piece. It's almost repeating myself from earlier, but I'm a big supporter and we are big supporters of integrated teams. There's lots of value with having SPS members on integrated teams. So for me, the short answer is yes, our intent is to bring over people that are existing in integrated teams and hire them on here and continue to have them in integrated teams. But as Jen and Norm have elaborated on, it's not exactly entirely our decision, and we need the other pieces to come to the table and agree to that.
Mike, anything to add?
I think it's important to know that there are multiple levels of government that we're working with in these discussions right now, and they will all work out, and we'll likely know more by the deployment in the fall, what that looks like.
Yeah, thank you. I see we're out of time and there's a lot more questions. Let me close with a couple of comments. First of all, thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you found it valuable. We will be creating an FAQ to be posted on our website, so you have a reference point for more information on the topics raised tonight. The next session is May 27 at 6:30. And I want to end by saying this. We have a very strong leadership team here, and I'm proud of them. And with respect to standing up a new police service, we're going to make this happen. And what drives us every day, is that we're here to make a difference for the citizens of Surrey. I want to thank you and stay safe and stay healthy.